Good morning, and I want to welcome you guys all to the Comix Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club for this is the month of September, right? We have a new sponsor. We are now being sponsored by The Beat, which is a comics news website, so yay to them. That's helping pay for equipment and stuff, so yay! There'll be links and stuff on the final broadcast, so. So we're here for this fantastic book, Sheets, by Brenna Thummler, who we are so glad to have here in person with us. You guys like Sheets, yeah?
Yes.
Louder! That's how I like to hear it. That's how I like to hear it. Yeah, no, I thought this was one of the best books that we've done in the club so far. It's smart, it's funny, it's scary in the right way. It deals with real subjects, and it's a very human book, and I really, which is amazing for a book about ghosts. And I want to thank you for this book because I really like this book a lot, Brenna. You know, thank you for joining us. Yeah.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So let's. I always start with the easiest question in the world, or the hardest, depending on your point of view. Why comics? What is it about comics that for you is the art form that you wanted to work in and express yourself in?
So this is kind of a strange story. I actively avoided comics most of my life. I didn't think it would be something that I would enjoy, and so throughout college, they always ask you, what do you want to do with your life? And I don't know, but definitely not comics. And so I ended up working at this publishing company, and throughout the years, people had told me, you really have this knack for storytelling and a lot of your illustration. Why don't you get into graphic novels and comics? I'm like, no, that's not for me. You're crazy. And so when I started working at this publishing company, they had me do some samples for a pitch for a book that they didn't end up doing. But then they saw my samples and they're like, no, you have to do a graphic novel of some kind. So that's actually how I ended up doing my first graphic novel, which was Anne of Green Gables. And I finally found, as cliche as it sounds, where I belonged. I mean, I never saw myself ever getting into comics until I was asked to do this incredible opportunity that I couldn't turn down. And actually, I think about a month before that, I had stumbled across Jillian Tamaki and Rico Tamaki's This One Summer in a thrift store. And I saw the cover, and I pulled it off the shelf, and I'm like, this looks so good, and opened it up, and like, oh, it's a graphic novel, which I've never read before. And I thought, maybe I should give this a try, because I've distanced myself from it for so long. And when I read it, I just fell in love with it, and I think that definitely was sort of fate. Like, it made me realize that graphic novels were a place where I could see myself. Mm-hmm. And then I did Anne of Green Gables, and I was like, I never want to do anything else again in my life.
Nice. So I'm curious about the that you actively didn't see yourself doing comics. Well, why is that? Did you think it was nothing with superheroes, maybe, or?
I think that I hadn't realized how diverse comics had gotten. Like I did picture sort of the superheroes like rescuing the damsels in distress, and I didn't realize that it spoke to all ages, like children's books. And when I realized that, and all the different directions it could go, I think it made me see, this is a place where I could possibly fit in. Right. And I think the work itself, there's so much work, there's so many illustrations in there, right? So it just seemed very overwhelming to me.
Sure.
But then I realized that most things I do actively seek overwhelming things. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of where I belonged all along.
Nice. Do you study illustration as a student?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's what I have my degree in, is illustration.
Mm-hmm. And what did you, like when you started studying, what in your mind, what did you think you were going to be doing with that?
I guess I pictured editorial work, which is illustrating work for magazines and newspapers and stuff like that. So just single illustrations for maybe some newspaper articles, things like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so they came to you and they said, we want you to adapt Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
Were you a fan of the book?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I think that was definitely one of the deciding factors for me to do it. Was I loved Anne of Green Gables. I grew up with the story throughout childhood, so.
Canada. Oh, very good. Yep. Canada. Canada. Yeah. You threw me off my questioning though there. You adapted it yourself, yeah? Or did you have someone working with you?
I just did the illustrations.
Just the illustrations, okay.
So actually another girl who worked at the publishing company that I was at, she did adapted it, the manuscript, the writing for it.
And how did she give it? Was it like a page by page breakdown, full script, or?
Well, this is the really cool part. So she was a friend of mine. We were working in the same company, and it was really great because a lot of times when you're working on a graphic novel, especially like you're only the illustrator and then someone else is writing it, you don't have a lot of communication with that person. So this was really great because we were working together and we could kind of sit down and talk about the book. And so I sort of developed, from my perspective, a list of events that happened in the book. And because it's really hard for writers to understand illustrators and illustrators to understand writers. So I kind of gave her a list of what was going on in my head, and she wrote the manuscript, and as she did that, I storyboarded. So it was very collaborative. And
Okay, very good, very good. Yeah. So you were showing her your breakdowns, and then she was adjusting what she was writing.
Oh yeah, it was kind of a back and forth.
Nice,
definitely.
nice. That's very nice. So how did Sheets come along?
That was actually a story that started when I was back in college. You know, so like when you always go through hardship in life. There's always going to be struggles and stuff, especially when you go away and you're not in the same mind space or same place you've always been. You have to face challenges sometimes, and so you know, I was struggling with some things. I was really lonely, and I kind of wanted to turn the emotions into a book that spoke to everybody with more of a whimsy to it. So it's like I really also love ghost stories. So I kind of took a lot of the emotions I was feeling, and I was probably doing laundry one day or something, and looked at the sheet and was like, what if Sheet Ghost had to be washed? And so this whole kind of story developed about the generic trick-or-treat costume of a sheet ghost. What would happen if those were actually ghosts?
Right.
And I did this illustration, a still illustration for one of my classes, where it's all these sheet ghosts, and I call it Ghost Resort. And so some of them are hanging from lines, and they're in the washer or the steamer. It's kind of like their own spa. And so I was like thinking about how a laundromat and laundry could be really fun for a ghost. And so I think the whole idea sort of started with that.
Okay. And when did you pitch this, like, relative to Hannah?
Sure. So when I first started thinking of my idea, it actually started as a chapter book because it was for a class assignment. And so I just had the first couple chapters written, and it was a very different story back then. But after I worked on Anne of Green Gables and realized that I never wanted to do anything else again, the editor I was actually working with on Anne of Green Gables, she moved to a different company, and we kept in contact. And I was thinking, you know, this might actually work as a graphic novel, and it would be really cool to be able to do my own original stories. So I actually worked up a query letter, which means you kind of write a pitch for your book, like you kind of talk about what it's about and what you're hoping people will get out of it, and you send that to an agent, and that agent then takes it to different publishing companies and tries to get it published. So what I did was I contacted that editor that I worked with on Anne of Green Gables and said, hey, can you look at this letter that I wrote to see if it sounds good enough to send to an agent? And she said, actually, can I just see the manuscript instead? And I'm like, yes, you can. And so she actually took that to an acquisitions meeting, which means they look at a lot of books and they decide, okay, which books do we want to publish, what do we think will sell at our company? And they ended up acquiring the book, so accepting the book for publication, and
nice.
That's how it all got started.
Nice. How much was done at that point?
I had the first rough draft,
okay.
the whole manuscript done, but a very rough version.
Okay.
So a lot of changes happened after that.
And was this was the manuscript prose only, some comics, or full breakdowns?
Oh, no, like full breakdown, yeah. So it was a manuscript. It kind of looks like what you might expect a play or a movie script to look like. So there are the names with their dialogue, and then there are sort of stage directions. So it kind of says what the character's doing or what the scene looks like. So it's very much like a movie script.
Yeah, well, so, because we've done a lot of these meetings, and everybody, it's fascinating, has a completely different process. And so when one person says manuscript, sometimes it means like a broken down book, like all laid out and everything.
Oh, so not the art as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I didn't have to do the art.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess you'd already worked with this editor, so they didn't really need to see any more from you to know
Right,
that
I
you
think
could
that's
produce the work.
key, yeah. A lot of times when you first pitch a book, they do like to see illustration samples to kind of get an idea of what the art will look like as well. But the editor, thankfully, had already seen my artwork, so she had a good idea of what it would end up looking like.
How long was the manuscript?
About 30 pages,
Okay.
maybe a little bit more in a Word document.
So it was a really kind of rough sketch of what the book would eventually become.
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, it was pretty much all of the dialogue.
Yeah. How long did it take you to complete the project?
Well, not including because the writing itself was a very gradual process, because I started the story back in college and then I sort of worked on it over time. So it's hard to judge how long the writing actually took me, but the artwork, it was less than a year. It was maybe between 8 and 10 months.
Okay.
But that was working nonstop
Okay.
on it.
Okay. And so let's see, that's probably what, a page every other day? Something like that?
What I do is I do all the line art first, and then I go back and I color it all after the liner is finished.
Okay.
So I usually could get about maybe 10 or 12 line arts done a week. And then once all that was done, I went back and did color, and that goes faster than line art.
Okay. What was I just about to ask? We were talking earlier. You say you work on pen and paper at full size.
Yes.
So.
Well, the board, I want to say it's
12 by 16 maybe?
slightly larger than
Okay.
that. Yeah, it's about that big.
Yeah,
It's
so
pretty big.
2 up or something more or less, maybe 2.5 times.
Yeah.
Why do you think that works to be able to draw big and then shrink it down?
Because I love detail. I love the little things, and so you'll notice a lot of what we call Easter eggs. So these little hidden things throughout the book. For example, a lot of the shop names are named after my friends. So in the very beginning, you'll see like Claire's Fudge Factory, and Claire's one of my best friends, or my other best friend Beth. She has her own psychic shop in one of the stories or one of the pages, and I love hiding things like that because it kind of makes this extra special experience for people who are closer to me to sort of be like, oh my gosh, it's my name, or oh, I recognize that place. See, like friends and professors are a lot of them are in there. The names of shops and restaurants that I grew up with as a kid, some of those names are in there. So I love hiding those little details that even if other people don't recognize them, it just makes it seem a little more special to me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times those are very, very small. So if I would draw on scale, it would be a lot more difficult to actually draw.
Sure. Yeah, and one of the things that really struck me about the book was how kind of grounded in, like, this town feels real to me. Is this like a place where you grew up, or how much of it is fiction? I guess.
Okay, so I did grow up in northwestern Pennsylvania, where this book takes place, but Finster Bay is a fictional location, and I really wanted it to have sort of a really run-down feel, because it's kind of funny, Wendell, he comes from the land of ghosts, which is a really sad and miserable place, but at the same time, Marjorie's kind of feeling that too. Like even though Wendell is seeking out this better place to be, the town of Finster Bay is not this glamorous location either. So I kind of wanted to show that it's not about the location, it's more about what you make of it. And I did want to make a very rundown, but almost like a beachy sort of touristy town. And so I found this place called Geneva on the Lake, which is actually in Ohio. And I've been going back there a few times, and a lot of the buildings are from there. Like, I've been inspired by buildings that are on Geneva on the Lake. And when I was there, most of the time, it was completely empty. It's mostly a place where people go during the summer. So a lot of like old hot dog stands and beach cottages and stuff like that. So when I was there, it was very empty, and I think that kind of inspired me. It felt like a ghost town.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of the buildings in there and shots are from Geneva on the Lake, which is about maybe an hour and a half from where I grew up.
Okay.
So it is very close.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the town felt really real to me. Did you like make a map of where everything was, like to keep it straight in your head? Or?
I didn't. No.
You didn't? Okay. Well, that's even more impressive, actually.
I made a layout of the laundromat.
Okay.
So like the rooms and everything, but the town itself, no.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah. All right. So you go through and you pencil the book, and then you scan it in the computer. I take it at that point.
Yes.
And are you doing the coloring all on the computer?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah. All in a program called Adobe Photoshop is what I do the coloring in.
Your palette is really interesting. It's really muted and it's really, but it's also really bright. Can you talk about that at all?
Yeah. So this book takes place in the 90s, and that's when I grew up. I was born in the 90s, and I wanted to have sort of that nostalgic feel of those really bright colors with the 80s and 90s, but also like laundry. Think sort of pale colors and pinks and purples and just a very like sweet kind of colors. And so definitely the pastel palette was drawn sort of from the mood I was trying to capture, but also the time period itself. And I've always been sort of a sucker for pink and purple together.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I opened the store in 1989, we were saying earlier, and our original store T-shirts were like electric blue with hot pink lettering on them.
Yeah.
It was very 90s. It was very 90s. I thought that it's really a spectacular looking book from the palette point of view and from the sense of the world. How much of the development of the book and the development of the story and the color, even the choices, how much of that was done with your editor and how much of that was just you doing it?
My editor is so wonderful. She gives me so much free rein. Like, of course, most of her changes just came with plot or grammar, a lot of the actual writing, but she pretty much leaves the art completely open to me. So I would say probably 98% or more of the art was just
nice.
The way I saw the book.
Who did edit it? It doesn't look like she's credited anywhere here.
Andrea Colvin.
Okay.
She's at Lionforge. She's the vice president of Lionforge.
Okay. Yeah. No, she's not credited in the book. Bad Lionforge not crediting your own people.
I might have thanked her in there.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully it's in there.
Very good. You got a Lemony Snicket quote on the back. That's pretty fantastic. How did that come about?
So it is very difficult to get in touch with big name people, but Lemony Snicket has always been such a huge inspiration to me. And actually, when I was living in Kansas City, I lived in Kansas City, Missouri for a couple of years, and Brian Selznick, who you might recognize, he wrote The Invention of Hugo Cabret and Wonderstruck and The Marvels. You guys know Brian Selznick? Yeah, he's awesome. He's a really great guy too. And he and Lemony Snicket actually came to speak at our library. And at the end, it was so cool because we all got to line up and actually go up and have them sign books and talk to them for maybe 30 seconds. Right. And I asked them to sign my sketchbook. And Brian Selznick kind of looked at some of my work and he was like, you should do graphic novels. And they're one of the people who were like, you should really do this. And I was still like, no, Brian, you're crazy. I shouldn't be doing this. And then later on, as I started realizing that graphic novels were what I was supposed to be doing, I kind of thought back to what Brian had said to me and was like, wow, like it was so thoughtful of him to sort of push me on that path as well. And the both of them were just very encouraging at that talk. In the very brief moment we had to actually speak. And so I'd gotten a Brian Selznick blurb on Anne of Green Gables, and so for the artwork of it. And then I was thinking back to that talk that I went to with Flemini's and with Brian Selznick, and it was in my heart, like I really wanted both of them to say something about this book, about the writing and the artwork combined. And so thankfully I already had Brian Selznick's contact information, and I tracked down Lemony Snicket's, someone in his publishing department, I'm not sure who it was. It took a while to find somebody to contact, and I wrote to them and asked if they could put me in contact with Lemony somehow, and they ended up forwarding that email to his assistant, who then forwarded it on to him, and he actually got back to me directly, which was just mind-boggling, and just, it brought me to tears, and so he actually sent me the blurb from him, and yeah, it was a heartwarming moment, for sure. One of the...
Nice. Hey, he lives in here in San Francisco, actually.
He does?
Yeah, he does, yeah. He's actually, he's a member of the Kids Club as well. Well, his son is a member of the Kids Club, but yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Thing to know, you know. He lives like 6 or 8 blocks from here, or something like that. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
This city just got so much cooler.
And Raina lives here too, so yeah, we've got like some of the biggest kids authors are right here in the Bay Area. It's kind of amazing. Yeah. Well, let me bounce out to you guys maybe, because I'm sure you all have a couple of questions for Brenna here. Yeah. I know you do. You always do. Please.
So I have a question. So later in the book, the Wendell goes into the guy, whatever his name, his house, the
Mr. Mustache?
yeah.
Mr. Mustache.
I
like that.
He has some ghost repellent. I was just wondering how he got that. How does he have the ghost repellent?
He, Mr. Sabertalk's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
He's a little odd. So he can't actually repel ghosts with that. He just has it in his mind that this water is going to keep away the ghosts, because later on you see that he understands, he knows that sheets can sometimes be ghosts. So he might understand that they have fears just like everybody else, and maybe he does know that there are things he can do to kind of keep them away. So, but in his mind, he just thinks that maybe he can repel this ghost with water. But really, he's just a weirdo and doesn't really know what he's doing. So it doesn't actually work. It just ends up that Wendell is afraid of water, which Sabertalk doesn't know. So that's why it works.
Okay, and then also is the ghosterizer thing. Are those like liquid?
They are, yeah. They're kind of like ghost shampoo.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, it's how ghosts stay clean.
In the back, in the blue shirt.
What is your favorite illustration you did of the entire book?
Oh man, ooh, that's a tough one. What I really like doing, because there are so few of them, are the 2-page spreads. So like the big illustrations of both pages. I really had a lot of fun with designing the ghost village. So all the little trailer parks here, and kind of like picturing what their town might look like. But I think maybe my favorite, let me see if it's in here, is this one of Marjorie walking back through her town. That was probably one of my favorites to do. Yeah.
No, it's a lot of emotion in that piece too. There's a lot of the characters in the book are sad or lonely, and I don't know that they realize that they are,
And I think sometimes you don't really realize that, like how lonely you really are.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about how what's his? I totally spacing his name. Mr. Mustache.
It's Sabertalk.
Yeah. But as soon as he said Mr. Mustache Man, that's like stuck in my head now. He's loony, but he's but it's because he's lonely and sad to me, you know?
I mean, even like you kind of, there are moments where you sort of feel bad for him.
Yes.
He's a terrible person, but I think underneath everybody is sadness. And
Oh, I thought you were about to say everybody's a terrible person.
there's a reason for
Yeah.
for people who are that crazy and mean.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I felt very sympathetic to him. We have a follow-up. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Also,
Mhm.
out of all the Easter eggs you put in the book, which is your favorite that you did?
Ooh, that's a tricky one too. I think one thing you might not realize is a lot of Marjorie is very me. So a lot like I also grew up playing piano, and the pumpkin farm that she goes to when she likes Spinneys. I actually grew up myself going to a pumpkin farm called Finney's Pumpkin Farm, and so I think those are actually some of my favorite illustrations as well. Are the illustrations from the pumpkin farm, and so things like that. I kind of drew a lot from my own life, so things like that are probably my favorite Easter eggs that I put in there.
Nice, nice. Second row, yeah.
Is there gonna be a prequel or a sequel to this?
I'm not sure how much I can say, but I would not say goodbye to Marjorie and Wendell just yet. There's a good chance you will be seeing them again.
Okay, and at the part where in the pumpkin patch or whatever it is, and she gets lost, and then the kid gives her the cookie, and then at the end, Wendell gives her the cookie. Is Wendell the person who gives it?
He is. Yeah, that's Wendell at the end there. Mm-hmm.
Very good.
It's a cool thing you picked up on. I wanted that to be sort of left in the air, like, is this him or is it not? I wanted it to have an air of mystery, but that was a good catch.
Yeah.
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 That's
No,
Wendell.
these guys are good readers. They always impress me with their questions. In the back.
I just want to know what happens to the guy's fish. Because he has a fish in one of the panels.
Oh, what happened to the fish?
Town.
You know what? Maybe it's still there in the house, because he does sort of run away. I'm not sure what happens to fish once your house gets taken from you.
Well, if someone doesn't feed it, then
I mean,
it's not like they can get up and walk away.
Right. You can't run away like a dog. The fish is kind of, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure when the government was cleaning, I don't know, is there a humane society for fish? I don't know what happens to fish when your house gets taken from you. That's a very good question. We should look into that and be more protective of our fish.
Are there ghost fish?
Yeah.
Like with little sheets on them?
So actually, one little thing you might notice in the Land of Ghosts, when they're all in their Dead Youth Empathetic meeting, there are some illustrations on the board in the background. And there's an illustration of a pillowcase, and it says, "My cat." And so the way I imagined things was when pets go to the Land of Ghosts, they turn into pillowcases. Because they're just a little bit smaller, the smaller version of sheets.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Yes, sir.
Do you believe in ghosts?
I do. Absolutely. How about do you believe in ghosts?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can't ever really tell, but I definitely do.
I actually would love a show of hands on this. How many of you guys believe in ghosts? Raise your hand. That's about half of the room. That's pretty good, and we got at least one half in there, so that's good.
Half is questioning.
Half is questioning. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Yes.
Okay, so in the beginning when Mr. Saber, however you pronounce his name, when he goes in and when he leaves, the flyers are on the little counter. How did that get there?
So, when I think Marjorie's sort of in the back laundromat area at that point, so he finds that secret key, to get in, and so he just puts those there when Marjorie's not looking. He's a very sneaky man. He can kind of find his way into buildings and put things on countertops that are not supposed to be there, and yeah, he's very sneaky.
Okay. Also, so
Why is Wendell afraid to share why he died? Why would he be...
I think he's kind of in denial. He doesn't want to admit that he's in the land of ghosts now. He's upset about that, and he kind of uses these made up stories to kind of cover up the truth and avoid having to admit that he is a dead youth and he didn't really get to experience the rest of his life. And so he uses these sort of make-believe stories to make it seem more interesting, like a more exciting way for him to be there. And when he's in that blanket fort and he's telling that story, when everything goes, when he's like the prince escaping from the castle, that's kind of his story. And you sort of find out that he himself, he kind of went swimming and he drowned.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of his doing, and I think he regrets that. I mean, he regrets trying to swim because he ended up drowning. And so he does want to make his death seem a little bit more heroic. So yeah, he makes up these fantastical stories to kind of build himself up, to build up his self-esteem.
They're dead, but they're just like us. Mm-hmm. They are us.
Well, in this one, there's two, like, ghosts that are flat on the roof, and I just don't know what they're doing.
They're sunbathing. Well, actually moonbathing, because there is no sun in the land of ghosts, so they're moonbathing.
Okay.
That's funny.
And I also noticed this little sign. It says vote.
Right, well, I mean, even the land of ghosts has to have people ruling the town. So they do have ghost mayors and ghost presidents, and yeah, it's kind of like the land of ghosts, they do have a lot of the same things as we have here, because they still have to function as a society. So yeah, the ghosts vote for people to run their city, and yeah.
I think it says vote Joe or something.
Do ghosts have inner sheet, or is the sheet something that just goes over them to make them an actual substance? Or
Right. That's a really
I
great
like that
question.
question.
Yeah, it's a great question. That's so. Yeah, the way I pictured it is that the ghost actually becomes the sheet, because the sheet can kind of collapse. But because ghosts, sort of like you guys really aren't sure if the ghosts are there or not, if they exist or not. There is sort of that question of, are they here or not? Like, what is a ghost? Are they this energy? Are they this actual being? And so that I kind of wanted that to be up in the air. Like, is there an actual form underneath this sheet, or is the ghost actually the sheet? And I think the way I see it is the sheet actually becomes the ghost, because that kind of lets them collapse on the floor and sneak through underneath the cracks in doors and stuff. So that's a really great question. I think that ghost energy can take a form, but it can also enter other forms. So it's kind of, maybe it's a bit of both, and it's kind of however you want to see it. Like, is the ghost the sheet, or are they under the sheet? Mm-hmm.
I like that question. That was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you thinking this when you made the land of ghosts? But were you thinking that basically the land of ghosts is really like a parallel universe to the land of humans?
Yeah, it kind of is. I sort of picture it as beneath the earth, because the ghosts do have to be able to access the land of humans, and they take that train. And so the way I saw it was sort of like you picture a subway, like underneath the earth. This train comes from the land of ghosts in the same way. And it is sort of like a parallel universe in that it's very similar to the land of humans, just a very melancholy and sad and empty and dark area. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ghosts grow or die?
They don't know. They live on perpetually as ghosts. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of sad.
Good.
How did you come up with the names of the characters?
That's a great question. So, I actually studied German for about 5 years back when I was in high school, and so a lot of the names in here of both the town or the characters' names are based on German words. So Saubertuck, for example, sauber means clean, and tuck is loosely based on the word tooth, which means sheet. It's kind of like a clean sheet. Like Finster, Finster Bay is like the dark shadowy of Finster. And then some of the other names themselves, like Marjorie, it's not a German word, but the name Marjorie means pearl. And I sort of saw her as this pearl, like this really rare gem. And like pearl, you think of like clean and white, which sort of relates to the laundry. And just like this very beautiful, unique and sort of quiet and calm sort of gemstone. And that's kind of how I equated Marjorie to be. And Wendell actually means wanderer. So a lot of the names have these hidden meanings behind them.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
Nice. Any other questions from you, my friends? Yeah.
Also, I have a question about the train. So the baby Timmy, that guy, he said you can only take the train for emergencies and Ouija. How often do they use the train for Ouija?
It depends on how often humans are performing Ouija back here in the land of humans. And you know, sometimes, like, because you know those Ouija boards, right? Like when people try to communicate with ghosts. And sometimes the ghosts communicate back and sometimes they don't. I think it depends on if they feel like that situation should be something that they enter into or not.
What kind of emergencies would they use for?
That's a good question too. I think that sometimes, you know, I think at the end when that lady ghost is talking to Marjorie and says that sometimes ghosts will come when they feel like they need to. And so I think a lot of times a ghost will enter into your life if they feel like it's a situation where they should be there. And so that kind of constitutes an emergency. So I think actually, I mean, Marjorie did need a friend, and Wendell ended up being that for her. So actually, that was kind of an emergency situation where Wendell the ghost needed to be there for Marjorie. And even though in the end the police are kind of saying, oh no, you shouldn't have gone to the Land of Ghosts, it might actually have ended up being an emergency that Wendell needed to be there for Marjorie, because she was very lonely and sad, and Wendell ended up being a friend to her, so that itself might have been an emergency situation.
Go ahead.
I don't remember actually. Like, so when she plays the piano, and then Wendell's in the window listening, isn't he like humming that or something? Or is that before?
Oh, that's actually, yeah, so Moonlight Sonata, that's actually the song that he mentions back in his meeting, the Dead Youth Empathetics. That's the song he said he tried playing on the drums in the Sahara.
And the other instruments, apparently.
Yes.
Did you, it's a book about loss, and it's a book about losing your family and dealing with that and then kind of getting past that thematically. Is this something that you personally had experience with?
No. So I think loneliness is universal. I mean, it takes many different forms. And the reason I chose loss for this was because the whole idea of death and ghosts. And so that's what I wanted Marjorie's loss to be. But I think that you can take that same emotion of loss over family, and it can apply to other feelings of loss in your life. So that same sort of sadness of losing a family member can be the same kind of loneliness you feel in other situations, like loneliness over not connecting with people, or even like not feeling like you have friends, or just an overall sadness, like not necessarily having a loss in your life, but just sort of an emptiness or sadness in your life. And Yeah, so the only reason I chose loss in this particular situation is because of the ghost aspect.
Well, you did a pretty exceptional job, I think, because it felt really sincere to me, and it felt like it came from a really real place. So, yeah.
The emotions themselves came from a very real place.
Yeah.
But no, I never lost my mom or anything like that. But yeah, definitely. I mean, the emotions are very real. But the loss itself is something that I sort of transform those emotions into.
It still makes the empathy of the book that much more amazing to me that you were able to do that in such a way that, you know, I feel like you really touched it, you know, very, very nicely there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I really do. So if we see these characters again, as you suggested that it's possible, in what kind of context would it be? Would it?
Right.
Because loss is so much of like that's kind of the backbone of the book that like is the spine that keeps it. So I'm super curious as how you're going to approach a sequel, whether it's a direct sequel or thematic sequel or just using the characters again.
So yes, so in the hypothetical situation that a sequel would arise, there might be a new character, and she might be struggling with a lot of bullying in school and questioning whether she herself should become a ghost. And I think because of this newfound friendship between Marjorie and Wendell, they might be able to help her recognize the importance and value of life. And yeah, so I think that if you see Marjorie and Wendell again, there will be more characters and more questions and more bullying and loneliness in different forms. And this question of identity, of you know what and value of life. And I think you'll also see a lot less laundry. A lot of it will not take place in the laundromat anymore. It's sort of more like sheets are not just something to spin around in a washing machine. They also are sort of a mask. And so I think the sequel might look more at the mask and costume aspect rather than the laundry aspect.
I mean, these are hard topics to deal with. I would say much more so because we just don't talk about these things, and so it seems like we shouldn't somehow.
But we need to talk about them, and I think that the biggest problem is not addressing the issues because it makes it seem like there's something wrong with them, and it's something that kids don't feel comfortable, or well, anyone, but especially children don't feel comfortable talking about these things, being open about their feelings, and that causes a problem. Like, you guys should always feel comfortable expressing exactly how you feel and any sadness that comes within you, because when you're able to talk about that with people, it starts this communication, this conversation that is so helpful. Talking about things is a very important thing, and I think that once you read a graphic novel or any book that encourages you to talk about the feelings, you'll feel more comfortable sharing things about yourself.
Was there any point in which you were talking to professionals about these subjects so that you knew, oh, maybe I shouldn't talk about it in this way, or?
I've done a lot of reading. I've spent a lot of time in the library reading psychology books about bullying and like childhood suicide and stuff like that, and just loss. So a lot of the emotions that you see in this or possibly future books, I have read a lot about it. And I also try to not avoid the subject, but talk about it in a more, like, not be so direct with the issue, and try to look at the reasons causing the issue rather than the issues themselves.
Sure.
So I think a lot of it, like a potential sequel, will focus on bullying and how, like, certain things in your life can lead to problems, and how to how to stop that problem before it becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Let's start in the back.
For the page with when the little girl is holding the sheet, then she tells Marjorie that you stepped on my friend. Does that little girl actually know about the ghost town, or is that just her imaginary friend?
You know, I think that is a ghost as well. I think that there are other people in the town who probably have had this experience too, but they're just not talking about it. Because, you know, Marjorie doesn't really feel comfortable sharing these ghosts with other people because people will probably think she's crazy, right? So, but, and a lot of times younger kids, you know how it is, sometimes adults just don't believe you even though you're completely right. And so, yeah, I think that ghost is an actual ghost, but people probably think that it's just an imaginary friend. But yeah, that ghost is definitely very real.
So when she's looking at like how Wendell died, or like how he drowned, it says he died on Lake Erie. And that's in Michigan, right? In Lake Michigan.
So Lake Erie, like, there are several states that touch Lake Erie, and so I actually grew up in Pennsylvania. I'm only maybe 30 or 40 minutes away from Lake Erie. So also Pennsylvania touches the lake as well.
So it would be in like 30 or 40 minutes away from.
It's from where I grew up, but actually, so Finster Bay, it's an imaginary town that I made up, and Finster Bay is actually right on Lake Erie.
But then where did Wendell live?
He lived in Finster Bay.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, he lived in the same place as Marjorie.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Were Wendell's and Marjorie's worlds supposed to be kind of like equivalents, because Wendell was being bullied or was being left out by the other ghosts like Penelope, and Marjorie was being left out by Tessie.
Exactly. That's a really good observation. So I think that you know, a lot of times you'll feel kind of all alone in a situation. So you might think that you're the only person sort of feeling this loneliness when there are other people out there who are just like you. So I think Marjorie and Wendell, they are very similar. They are suffering a lot of the same issues, and that's what makes them so drawn to each other and such good friends, because they understand each other. They get the sort of bullying and loneliness, and they have a lot in common and can be really great friends. Yeah, that's a really great observation.
Yeah, no, that was a really good observation. These guys are really smart,
Yeah.
aren't they? They really understand like thematic stuff that adults would be like, oh, I don't know. Yeah,
Right.
you guys are great. You know, and I think it's important to remember. I mean, not just for you guys, but anybody who might be watching this at home or later. You know, like the feelings that you have sometimes. Like everybody has those feelings, whether it's being happy or whether it's being sad or feeling lonely, feeling alone. People everywhere feel that all the time, and you're absolutely normal and right for feeling the way that you feel. And there's always people out there who will be your friend, I think, if you look and you keep your eyes open.
And you just have to be patient sometimes. Sometimes it's not going to happen right away, and you just have to say, you know what, like right now, things are difficult, and that's kind of what I wanted to get across in Sheets, right? Because like Marjorie, she has to go through so much, right? She has a lot of bad things happening to her, and she still perseveres. She pushes through all that, and eventually things turn out okay. And it takes a while. It takes some time for her to actually be okay. And sometimes that happens. So you just have to get through all that hardship, and eventually things turn around.
Yeah. Did we have one more question there, or was your hand stick down again? Oh, it's back up. All right.
Well, on the last, like the very, very last, like page.
Yeah.
Why is there like that piece of paper that says things I hate?
Right. So at the very, very beginning, Marjorie's kind of working on that list. She says there are 2 things I hate, and that's laundry and ghosts. And at the very end, things have changed, right? She's like, oh, wait a second, I don't hate ghosts anymore.
Still hate laundry though.
Laundry's definitely still on there. Laundry will always be on there.
But why would she hate PE and stuff like that?
Because isn't PE awful? It's the worst.
It's awesome.
I think mostly everything on that list, I myself have hated or still hate.
Even
Yeah.
that chili dip commercial?
That was actually, so I was looking at very obnoxious commercials from the 90s, and I found this chili dip commercial that just drove me nuts, and I just added that to the list.
Also, gym class for someone from the 90s and for you guys is very, very, very different things. In PE, when I was a kid, and I'm a little older than you, so this would be in the 80s, but they would like make us climb these ropes, like for no reason. They went nowhere, and
Just went up.
It just went up, and you had to wear these little gym uniforms. Everybody had to take a shower afterwards. You guys are so lucky that you guys don't have to shower together. It's the strangest thing.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's like
kindling.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So, fantastic book. I really think this is one of the best books that we've done, and I know you guys enjoyed it too. I want to thank all y'all for coming out. I want to thank Brenna for coming out and taking the time to talk to us.
So much fun.
Yeah. Next month, our book is Criminy. Criminy is by Roger Landridge and Ryan Ferreira, who I might have mispronounced his name. I don't know. We'll find out next month when we talk to them. One of these guys is in England and the other guy's in Canada, so this will be one of those ones where it'll be on the video. We will be talking to them on video next month. But it'll still be a good conversation because this is a very funny book. So this was a very serious book. This is a very funny book. We're gonna bounce back and forth like that, yeah. And you guys who are here today will be able to pick this up. Just give your name at the counter, and they will get you a copy. We don't have the buttons yet, but the buttons and magnets and stuff will come next time. And do we have a question in the back there? Was that a hand raised? No? Yeah.
Do you hate purple ketchup?
Purple
Is that
ketchup?
one of the items on the list?
Yeah.
Abnormally comfy.
So I think it's bizarre. When I was in the stores when I was a kid, I never wanted to touch it. I never wanted purple ketchups on my hot dog.
Purple
ketchup.
Yeah, it was a
Oh yeah, it was a thing. They existed. There was, I think, purple and green.
green, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was disgusting. They were horrifying.
Oh, and one more in the front.
Well, so I used to be afraid of ghosts,
Okay.
and I had this. My mom created this potion. That's what she calls it. But then I lost it. But I always used it because I thought they would haunt me and surround me when I'm sleeping. So I always hid under my blankets and sprayed it all over my house.
It's good. It's good to have protection like that.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the ghost protection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you like the book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not scared of these ghosts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, some ghosts are wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. Well, very good. I'm going to call it there then. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Brenna, for coming out. Thank you, our sponsors at Beat, for sponsoring the show. And thank you, everybody who's a member, or those of you who are watching this at home who aren't members. You can certainly become a member of the Kids Club, graphicnovelclub.com/kids, and you get fantastic books like this every month, and the opportunity to meet fantastic people like Brenna Thummler. Thank you very much, everyone.